Good evening. Welcome to Arena. And in case your mind runs on Christians and lions, let me say that Arena is a series of arts programmes that go 1 week theatre, 1 visual arts. And tonight is Theatre Night. We've got a film about David Hockney's designs for the Rake's Progress at Glyndebourne, a conversation with Lord Olivier, and news of some of the things that have been erupting in theatre recently. As the weeks go by, there'll be a change of presenters, each with a different slant on the theatre, me this time, somebody else next. But there will be one regular contributor every fortnight. And here he is, Kenneth Tynan.
If I were to be asked who had exerted the most powerful and creative influence on the English theatre in the first half of our century, the person I'd choose wouldn't be a playwright or an actor. In fact, it wouldn't be an artist at all, but a red-faced, obstreperous spinster with a Cockney accent, no formal education, and a passionate belief that theatre was not an end in itself, but a means of improving and illuminating the lives of ordinary people. This amazing woman was Lillian Mary Bayliss, who laid the foundations in this country for a national ballet, and a national opera, and a national theatre. She took over the management of the Old Vic in 1912, and she held the job until she died 25 years later. Unsubsidized by the state, always praying to God to send her good actors, cheap, she pushed the Old Vic and the English theatre into an utterly new direction. She created a local audience, Lillian's people, with its own identity and its own stars, who included Sybil Thorndike, John Gielgud, Ralph Richardson, Edith Evans, many others. In 1931, she extended her activities to Sadler's Wells Theatre, and there she launched 2 companies that afterwards grew up into the Royal Ballet and the English National Opera. Under her guidance, and with the help of such directors as Sir Tyrone Guthrie, the Old Vic acquired an international reputation as London's home of classical theatre. In 1936, Guthrie engaged as the company's star a 29-year-old actor named Laurence Olivier. He already had a big name as a romantic lead, but he hadn't yet proved himself in the classics. At the Vic, he established himself by playing, among other parts, an uncut version of Hamlet and Sir Toby Belch in Twelfth Night. I'm happy to hear that the Bayliss name won't be forgotten when the new National Theatre moves into its home on the South Bank next spring. Peter Hall announced earlier this week that his plans include the formation of an elite corps of actors who will specialise in Shakespeare. They'll be known as the Bayliss Group. I can't think of anybody better equipped to talk about Miss Bayliss and her achievement than Laurence Olivier, the star of her last theatre and the man who was in charge of the National Theatre Company during its first triumphant 10 years at the Old Vic. Richard Findlater says at the end of his book about her, of all the talents at large in the British theatre between 1900 and 1940, the most remarkable was Lillian Mary Bayliss. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I think she was the most remarkable. Well, she had this talent to take something that entertained the public with penny Bible readings, lectures on moral subjects, pathetic little concerts, pathetic little performances, which was when she took it over. No theatre license till 1914. Wasn't allowed to put on a full play of Shakespeare. She put on a tableau vivant of somebody saying the quality of mercy or something like that, and the curtains used to part and there was somebody doing that, an absolute statuesque silence with the orchestra, 3-piece probably, doing a little jig on the thing. And that's all she had, and she built it from there to being a Shakespeare house, certainly in the south of England, unrivaled, and it was hardly rivaled even by Stratford, although Stratford always guaranteed good business, because Stratford was, after all, a pilgrimage place long before the Old Vic became such a thing. But she worked it up from there, and not only that, but built another one called Sadler's Wells. I mean, the record is incredible on 2.5 farthing. I mean, I don't know how she did it. I cannot imagine how she had the guts to go on at people to get more money, more money, more money. And she wasn't money-grubbing herself. She was immensely generous. All her money, she was free with as the air. She was marvellous in helping.
At one point, she actually asked for her salary to be cut.
Yeah. Yes, she was so worried about the expenditure going on. Of course, she lived on nothing, sausages and sardines or something.
Although she created the Old Vic, and as we know, she created Sadler's Wells Opera and Ballet, do you think she really knew anything about theatre or Shakespeare?
Well, she had this extraordinary instinct, didn't she, about a person's qualities, who to engage. She managed to stifle her conscience often about the sort of people she engaged, because the keynote of her conscience was the success of the Vic, rather than religious thinking. I mean, she did an awful lot of that herself, and it's perfectly, I'm sure it's quite true, though she never did it in my presence, but I'm sure it's perfectly true that she spoke to God through the telephone on her knees, and all the stories, same as some good actors and she, but all absolutely, I'm perfectly certain, so typical they must be true. And I heard her say some such things in my time, but she never spoke to me about religious matters. I think she always knew when not to. I'm sure she didn't accept a shock or a Paul, even Charles Laughton. I don't think she'd mentioned it to him. But I think she liked me. I certainly liked her, and I don't think you could like a person like Lillian if she didn't like you a little bit.
But you wouldn't consult her about a part or anything?
No, I'd be expecting her, if she had a thought, to say it. I can't remember her saying anything to me in a critical way, though perhaps she should have done, but I can't remember her saying anything like that. She seemed to know her business too well, somehow.
Now,
I'm sure she was very unkind to young actors. Well, you've had your chance, you missed it, and all that. But when she knew, had a wonderful divinity about what she could afford to do and what she couldn't, which absolutely was a wonderful eighth sense, of the last-minute sense she had. It must have stopped her.
She was sometimes accused of being mean, rude, conceited. Did you ever find that?
Well, yes, I think there is a certain justification for all charges. Yes, a bit. It was run like a parish hall, and you felt that. As soon as I arrived in the place later on, I thought, I wonder if I'm going to be able to bear the smell of stale tea and dead cats that is absolutely constant here. And the sort of dusty chumminess of the tea and hard-boiled eggs and the smells that attended on those things. It was, I don't think I ever liked the Old Vic very much. It's an awful thing to say. I know people are terribly sentimental about it. And I've just been there, for, as you know, for about 11 years, and I've never really loved that theatre. I suppose I do by association, but not for itself.
Miss Bayliss rather resented the intrusion of star names from the West End. Did you see Laughton at the Vic at all?
Yes, I saw him in Macbeth. Of course, Lillian resented more than the star names. She resented Laughton.
Why?
Well, he had a very unfortunate, condescending manner, Charles. He had this intellectuality that always made people think it was a bit phony. It wasn't right for an actor to have tones of voice like that and to quote, I don't know what, psychological insights of all various kinds. And it wasn't quite done yet. And I remember years later, Charles asked me to direct him in King Lear, and I said, Charles, no, I won't. He said, why not? And I said, I don't understand a bloody word you say, Charles. I'm awfully sorry. We wouldn't get on at all. And he was very intellectual, very intelligentsia, and liked to appear so. And of course, Lillian took against that and bridled very much against it. And the more she made him aware of the fact that, of course, the more unfortunate the relationship became. The Macbeth was very interesting from an extremely realistic point of view, as I remember it. Tony Guthrie's production. People all behaved with utter naturalism. I thought, this is a very powerful way of doing it. Very powerful. I remember the Banquo particularly, and the Lennox, I think, was a very young actor called James Mason. Malcolm, I think, was Marius Goring. Flora was Lady Macbeth. And a lot of it was very, very good. Charles wasn't very good. He was terribly monotonous and did everything at the rising inflection at the end of every line, and made it very dry. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps on this petty pace from day to day, and it was painful. And he didn't look the part either, as you can imagine. But anyway, it was a huge success, and the theatre was pretty well packed, I'd say. Not entirely packed, because I don't believe it ever was.
The last production you were involved with under her management was the one during which she died, which was the Macbeth.
Yes.
What do you remember of that one? That was 1937.
Yes. It was a disastrous dress rehearsal, the most disastrous, I suppose, I ever remember in my life. I had asked Tony Guthrie to be directed in Macbeth by Michel Saint-Denis, who was very much the god and the hero of the English theatre then. He arrived in the country with a company of his own called La Compagnie des 15, Theatre of 15, and it was a very good company, brilliant. And he was very much in demand by anybody. They all wanted him to direct them. And I asked for Guthrie. I asked him to please engage Michel Saint-Denis for my Macbeth. I didn't sense, really, at the time, it was very blunt and stupid of me, I didn't sense how hurtful that was to Tony. He directed me in everything else that I didn't realize that he might be envious of, or at all jealous of Michel. But I think he was. And he didn't show hurt, he was too elegant for that. But it was only when this dress rehearsal came up that I realized what I had done. And about 2 or 3 in the morning, Andrew Cruikshank is, I think John Laurie, no, he wasn't in the company yet. Roger Livesey was Macduff, and Andrew Cruikshank was Banquo. I was Macbeth, and Judith Anderson was Lady Macbeth. And there are 4 people, I think only, that I know of, who are alive to tell the tale. But they could corroborate this or not. But my remembrance of it is that Michel was still saying about the first curtain up on the 3 Witches in a blackout. No, 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 he said. First the drum, then the light, then you go ha to the first witch. And he'd done that about umpteen times and he couldn't get it right. And between 2 and 3 in the morning, down stormed from the back of the theatre Tony Guthrie. And I'm afraid I could sense a sort of pleasure in this entrance. And he said, Michel, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you haven't reached the 3rd light cue, we'll have to postpone. And so I and Michel, we sort of gathered and said, sure, nothing. I said, well, it is, late, and my voice isn't really all that hot, and if you go on till, we should go on to finish the dress rehearsal, we'll be about noon tomorrow. We shall open, the curtain will go up at 7 o'clock, whatever it is, and we'll be absolutely dead. And I don't think I'll have any voice at all. And I think perhaps, Michel, we better do what Tony says. And so we did. And poor Michel, I remember him in deepest shame addressing the company, having them all down on the stage. We were waiting in their rooms for about 5 hours. And saying, I remember his hand was here in a sort of way, either to lift his face up or wishing his hair grew down there. I don't know which it was, but he had this gesture to say, I'm afraid we have to postpone. It is dreadful, I'm very sorry. We have to postpone for a few days. And so we did.
This must have been outrageous to Lillian.
We'd
never had a postponement.
Appalling to Lillian. I didn't see Lillian that night. She was in her room, but she did have a tannoy in her room, you know. Only one in the whole theatre, and it was into her room. So she must have heard everything. And apparently she had a very big row with Tony that night. And that was the end of it, really. But I went down to the theatre next day, I think it was, or no, 2 days later. We were still rehearsing, and I remember going to the stage door to attend the rehearsal about the day before we finally opened. We only put off for about 3 days at the most. And meeting Judith Anderson, there's a picture somewhere. Some newspapers got it, took it, snapped it, and I've got a copy of it somewhere, I can't find it. But it was me going like that to Judith Anderson, who was going like that. And I was telling her Lillian was dead.
Laurence Olivier in wonderful form, and one of the few actors who could have made it on the halls. Last week, the Nottingham Playhouse production of Trevor Griffith's play Comedians brought Jimmy Jewell to the National Theatre, just the last in a long line of stand-up comics who've brought their skills to what's called straight theatre. Max Wall, recently seen as Archie Rice in Osborne's The Entertainer, opened last Monday, gloriously, in his new one-man show, Further Aspects of Max Wall, at the Shaw Theatre. If we're talking about skill and daring on a stage, I commend Sandra Brown, a new operatic talent who recently sang Octavian in Rosenkavalier at the Coliseum, and delighted a disbelieving audience by sprinting across the stage, leaping boldly into the middle of a large bed, and, without appearing to draw breath, produced wonderful music. I'd say that the Theatre Royal Stratford East, London, has seen more wild events than any other theatre in England. And now, for a month, it's got Ken Campbell's Roadshow, where, among much else, you can see Sylvester McCoy, the human bomb, putting a ferret down his trousers. One newspaper asked the question, is it art? Well, that I can't answer, but it certainly moves an audience to the edge of its seat. For group skill, I'd suggest a visit to a Tin Hut in Stratford, the RSC's other place, where, unless you have better luck than I did, you won't be able to get a ticket for Ben Kingsley in Hamlet. Last week, they opened Man is Man by Brecht. Howard Davis did the production, and take it as a high compliment when I call the whole evening makeshift. Every expense spared, and Royal Shakespeare actors for once not behaving as if they're carrying a sort of national heritage round on their backs, but relaxing and having a good time. Do go and see it. Stephen Polyakov has one play running and one rehearsing at the Bush Theatre, Shepherd's Bush, and both of them obsessed with tape and television and the endless stream of electronic chat. In the new play, City Sugar, John Shrapnel plays a disc jockey, Leon Vitali, his downtrodden assistant, and here they discuss what they call Stage 2, a new and even dafter competition to keep the audience hooked.
All right. What's Stage 2 then?
I don't know.
You have a chance to make a suggestion.
Could try anything. Well, it's got to be something they can photograph for Saturday's front page. And it's got to be difficult, or we'll be transporting the all-female population to London, won't we?
Christ, look at you, grinning all over your face. You're worse than the people upstairs. Given half a chance, Johnson would have those kids tunnelling underneath the motorway before being allowed to win.
At the last Yellow Jacks concert they did here, a girl asked Ross, begging him, to sign her lip. And he did. I wondered whether she was going to cut that bit off and keep it in a jam jar to stop the signature coming off.
Stop that. You're not going to talk like that in here, do you understand? I don't like it. Hello there, my sweets. Well, Rex is just approaching me with the postcards of those who've got through to Stage 2. Diane Williams says she'd like to go to Scotland with Pete and climb mountains with him because he's afraid of heights. You little sadist, Diane. Thank you.
Now that the Glyndebourne Opera is on tour, a few more people are going to be able to see Stravinsky's The Rake's Progress with designs by David Hockney. It's the story of a prodigal young man who wastes his substance and ends up mad in Bedlam.
I love the definition of pleasure. The idol of all dreams, the same, whatever shape it wear or name, whom flirts imagine as a hat, old maids believe to be a cat. Then I just hit on the idea of cross-hatching. I didn't know at the time they were also having a Czech opera on here. So they could have a cross-hatched opera and a Czech opera.
Cross-hatching, line and check patterns, the texture of an old engraving. It's everywhere. Even the wigs are made of separate black and white threads. And this is how Hockney makes the sets echo the original, Hogarth's Rake's Progress. Just as Stravinsky's music quotes from the 18th century, from Mozart, for instance, Don Giovanni. There's even an epilogue, as there is in Giovanni, a moral summing up. And Auden and Kalman's libretto quotes as well. They add an echo of Faust. The man who gives the hero wealth is Nick, old Nick, the devil. He gives him riches and pleasure and experience. And in the end, a graveyard scene, he almost wins his soul. But the hero escapes with his life, at the price, though, of madness, of Bedlam. And we're back to the Hogarth. And Hockney found his designs nearly all in Hogarth. Not just the rake, but other engravings. For instance, for a brothel scene, a machine for measuring passion, a lecherometer.
The lecherometers are from, I don't know, a weird engraving I found of a kind of ball. I didn't know too much about. I mean, I like the picture, but I don't know the details of what it's about, really. The bread machine, for instance, in this opera, it doesn't appear at all in the original Rake's Progress, but I drew my machine from another engraving of Hogarth's that's a money machine. I mean, mine's just a copy. It's exactly a Hogarth machine. And a money machine is the same thing, in a way, as the bread machine. I mean, it's supposed to make money, which that machine is supposed to make money. I mean, we all know it's a fake, but obviously Hogarth's, I don't know how it works, so it must be the same thing. But I felt, well, Auden and Chester Kalman had obviously looked through a book of his engravings, and their work is really based on that imagery, that iconography. And so I thought, well, I'm going to base mine on that. And then, to me, the music is crisp, clean, sharp in many ways, and lines and things like that are crisp, clean, and sharp. So I thought it would fit in, really. The music seemed to me very stylized, and I thought there must be a way to stylize it without being too realistic. So I thought, well, we can do it with cross-hatching. Then the problem was colour, because, of course, cross-hatching is only a black and white technique, or a monochrome technique, essentially, and it's meant to disappear. The idea of cross-hatching is that when you get far enough away, you get tones of grey. And, of course, I didn't want that to happen. I meant you to be able to see the cross-hatching, so deciding on the scale was important. And then I thought, well, you should have, have some colour. And I don't know whether you noticed, the opera does begin quite colourfully, and it slowly gets darker and darker. And colour re-emerges at the end in the Bedlam scene, that's all. After all, he doesn't die, he's made to go mad. So you can have a little colour reappearing, I thought, now. In the libretto, it says the madmen should run around the stage and wave around and dance around him. And I then thought the chorus should be still and static. And I did find an image in Hogarth of some paupers in boxes, rather trapped. And I thought that was marvellous for madmen, to put madmen in boxes. And then the problem was about their faces, to give them character. And so there are 24 of them. Well, if you know Hogarth's, the final Bedlam scene doesn't have even 24 people in it, I don't think. But there are, some of the masks are direct from that scene. The woman with the book on it, playing a violin, the king with the cross. To me, the music is so beautiful. That scene where they sing the duet is marvellous, ravishing music, and very sad. I mean, that nearly brings tears to your eyes, and that's the only real bit of the opera, I think, where you really feel emotional. And then I suddenly see you can't end that opera on that note, because it is comic at times and tragic. But so that epilogue, when they walk on, I mean, it is like Don Giovanni, I know, but when they come on and have their say at the end, at first, when you read it, I thought it wasn't essential. But now, when you see it and hear that music, and I watched them in the Bedlam scene, it is essential to end the opera on a slightly lighter note.
That that epilogue does give a sense of irony and distance. It's very much Hockney's style as a painter. He likes detachment, the comment that words or titles make on pictures. And here he's put quotes written up above the scenes.
I mean, Hogarth puts words in. I wanted balloons to keep falling down with words on saying. For instance, when he says, there are 3 or 4 lines that are spoken, almost spoken in the opera. I wish I had money. I wish I was happy. What's the other one? I've forgotten. But we made these big balloons, and they were supposed to drop down as he says it. But the thing is, they looked too funny when we did it. And at the wrong moment, when he's saying, I wish I was happy, obviously means he's sad. And when you drop a big balloon in with the words on it, the mood is wrong. But it would have worked. Maybe I wish I should have put them somewhere else, really.
Irony and poking fun is part of Hockney, but is it part of Glyndebourne?
You know, I thought, oh, I wonder what it's really like. And I don't know, sometimes the audiences, you know, they almost put you off. But backstage, it's really quite marvellous and quite different. And I think, I don't know, the standards are genuinely about artistry, and it's very exciting, and it's marvellous working with people who are always busy. I love it when you're still painting scenery and Eugene Onegin is singing on the stage and Cosi fan tutte is in another room, and they're all still doing my cross-hatching. I loved it.
So let us sing as one, and all times, in all lands, people who have sung is common as moved through, since he went out with along.
I like music. I think music is magical, marvellous. Seems to me poetry is better than prose, and poetry with music is heightened poetry, and that's what opera is. I mean, it's heightened experience.
Great pictures. That was a film by Colin Nears. You can see the Rake's Progress tomorrow night in Oxford and very soon in Norwich, Manchester and Southampton. There's a Women's Theatre Festival on at Leicester. My apologies to them and to everybody who's noticed and mind that this has been an all-male programme, and even Sandra Brown was in trousers. But the next theatre programme, a fortnight from tonight, has a film about birds of paradise on Bournemouth Pier and is presented by Deborah Norton. Good night.